So there's a debate going on campus right now on the topic of abortion. Do you have any opinions on that topic?
If the debate is pro-choice or pro-life,
That's right.
I'm pro-choice.
Okay, how about you?
Wow. If debate is, I don't know,
Pro-choice or pro-life? What side are you?
pro-choice, actually.
Why would you say you're pro-choice?
I think it depends on the situation, but like in most cases, when something like that comes up, like if it's you've been sexually assaulted and you have a child, or it just sort of happens and you don't want to have a child, I think if it's early enough, you should have the decision to not have that child. I don't know.
I agree with Luca, but it's also like the financial situation as well. If you have like the ability to give the child like a good education and then like raise up with like no harm, then I think they should do it. But then if they don't have the ability at the moment, I think like it's a choice.
So I noticed you said child. Do you believe it's a child? It's a baby in the womb?
I think it depends on how far along you are. Like if it's like you're like 5 months in, then no. But if it's right at the start, then like I think there is a distinction between like child and like fetus, or if you're like in the germinal stage, etc. And again, this is all opinion. Like I don't think it's necessarily right, but if I were in that situation, I would want to have the option to abort a child if I wasn't ready.
I think it's how you see it. If you see it as a baby, then obviously it's a baby. But if you see it as a fetus, then it's a fetus. Yeah.
So fetus actually means small baby, means small child. So if you use the word fetus, you're basically saying it's a baby or a child.
I didn't know.
Yeah. So at what point in development do you think it becomes a baby that a woman shouldn't terminate?
Honestly, I don't have any opinion on that. Like, especially if you're defining fetus is just small baby. Like, I don't think there is any good argument to say if at all points they are a child. Like, there is no point. Like, personally, I would think like once like the child starts to form to the point where you can see arms and legs, like that's like maybe not okay. But like when you're still in like the embryonic stages, then it's more so okay. And that's just off like my mild understanding.
Well, I feel like it's if the baby's fully developed, then at that point it's been so long. I don't think you should do the abortion. But if like the baby is just like start up first month, then like it's okay to have your choice and opinion and see how like your future. Like if you see the baby in your future, then obviously you can do the abortion. But if you don't, then yeah, abortion.
So, did you know that all of the DNA and kind of our genetic code that determine, your hair color, your skin color, what you look like right now is present at the moment of conception?
No.
Yeah, I do know that.
So, there's really no difference between the moment of conception and, let's say, the child at 8 weeks in utero or 20 weeks in utero, other than size and stage of development. But in terms of their DNA, it's all there. They're a separate entity from the woman. They're inside of the woman, but they're a different body. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, in the sense that I did not know that, and it makes me feel like more of a shithead for saying I'm pro-choice, but at the end of the day, I still am pro-choice on the biased opinion that if I were ever to be in the situation where I was with like a girl and we found that she was with a child, I'd want to have the decision to be like abort if we weren't ready for that child.
Right. So I'm going to ask you kind of a provocative question. How would you fill in the blank? It's okay to kill a baby in the womb when?
Crap. I don't know. When you're not ready for the child? I don't know.
Does that justify murder?
No, now you're like changing my opinion. You're making me feel like a shithead for it a little bit. So I don't know. Like I don't have a lot of information on abortion.
Like,
I've only thought of
sure.
it from the sole thing of me being a teenager and not wanting to like have a child at 18, especially if I were to have a child and not have like either the ability to like take care of her or even like a home to give it to in that sense.
I think there's a lot of people on the topic of abortion that, like, there's a narrative out there, right, in the media and culture that we're supposed to be pro-choice, women's right to choose. No, that makes sense. But a lot of people I don't think have really researched it or thought about it much. Would you say that's true of you guys? I don't want to, just assume, but based kind of on what you said.
Yes, very true. And like I think the most important thing is doing your research. So even in this interview, like that's why I want to make it clear is I don't have a lot of knowledge. This is purely based off my biased, limited knowledge. That's what my opinion's based off. So even now as I'm saying, like I feel kind of like a worse person as you kind of inform me more about like kind of what it is.
Awesome. So let me ask you a follow-up question. So let's say you became convinced it was murder, and so a baby is being murdered every time an abortion takes place. What's wrong with that? Why is murder wrong? Like, even if it was murder, why is that wrong? Why can't we go around killing babies?
Because it's never okay to take the life of someone else.
Says who?
Says me.
So,
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's never okay. But back to the first question that you had, like at what point it's okay to do abortion? I feel like to the point that if the child doesn't have a chance to survive when he was born, then it's okay. That's what I feel. Because I feel like a lot of medical problems like happen to the child when the child's in the female's body, and sometimes they have like zero chance of surviving once they're born. So what's the point of going through that whole pain for the female when you know that it's a zero chance of, like, there's a zero chance of the child to survive once they were born? That's my opinion.
so it's okay to murder them if the doctors think they might not survive?
Well, if they were dead in the body already, so it's like
No, that wouldn't be an abortion if they're. It wouldn't be an abortion if they're already dead. It would just be a delivery.
they have like a zero chance of surviving with multiple doctors' opinion. I don't think that's murder.
Right.
In a way.
Well, how would you define murder then?
It's when a child's like, or like
Just murder in general. Like, what's a basic kind of general definition of murder?
when you take a life away from someone. Yeah.
So wouldn't that be murder? Isn't that what you're doing? You're taking their life away from them?
Like now I'm getting confused, you know. So yes.
So, like, the logic behind a lot of pro-choice arguments really falls apart if you take it to its logical extreme. But back to that question, so let's say it is murder, which I believe it is. Let's say you guys conceded that. What's wrong with murder? Why is murder wrong? Who says so? Some people think it's not wrong. I mean, there's very few, right? But Hitler thought it was okay to kill millions of Jews. Who's to say he wasn't right for doing that?
It's most likely opinion based of what you see murder is. If like for us, we see murder is wrong. Like like you have to know, you don't have the right to take away like someone's life, but for others, they might think that it's okay. So it's like I feel
So
like,
then is it okay? If I think it's okay, is it okay?
I feel like it's opinion like wise. Like you can't stop people from thinking what they're thinking, but you can stop yourself. You can change your point of view based on the facts that you're getting from other people.
And it depends on the person too, because up until this moment, I didn't recognize a person like at the point of conception as still being a child. I thought that was different, but now you've informed me that even at the point of conception, they're their own body. So that changes my perception a bit. So I think it's informing people, and then you can have the discussion about are you pro-choice or pro-life.
So you talked about people having differing opinions on a topic like murder. Would that argument hold up in court? So let's say I killed someone and I told the judge, me personally, I think that murder is okay. Would the judge let me go free?
No, in a way, but there's always like reasons behind every murder, so that can play a big role in the court. But like at the end, like no one's gonna most judges does not believe that murder is okay in court.
Yeah, like 99.99% of people believe murder is wrong, right? We believe stealing is wrong and lying is wrong. Have you ever thought where that comes from? Like, why do we have an intrinsic moral compass? Like animals don't have a moral compass, right? If a lion goes and tears apart an impala and eats it, it's not thinking later, boy, I shouldn't have done that, right? We have a moral compass different from all other creatures on this planet, all other life. Where do you think that comes from?
I have no clue.
I have no opinion on that either.
Can I share what I believe?
Yeah.
So I'm a Christian. I believe that God has created us all in His image. And so there's a lot of things kind of entailed in what that means, but part of it is He's created us with a moral compass, a spiritual and moral compass. We know intrinsically that murder is wrong, and God says so in His Word. Without God, there's no sense of objective good or objective evil, objective morality. We're just chemical reactions right now. We have no control over this conversation. Who are you to say that murder's wrong or murder's right or whatever, apart from God? But because God determines what good is and what objective morality is, and he's given us that moral compass. We know that murder is wrong. We can say definitively murder is wrong. But without God, who's to say murder is wrong? It's all subjective. It's all relative.
Well, with that point, that's still opinion based. It's what God believes in, and it's like I know a little about Christian. It's like the fact that we're sinners and then always will be, and we're just doing things to be with God in the afterlife. So that's what God's opinion. Like God, like Jesus sacrificed himself for us. So that's what like.
Do you believe that?
I do go to church, and I part of it does believe that it's like being a sinner for the things that we have done, and yeah, I think it's more like opinion based. Even with abortion, like going back to the abortion topic, it's all down to opinion and how you see the situation, not what like others sees it. I believe.
You were going to say something too, I think.
Oh, and just going on opinion, and you touched on Hitler, and even I'm a business student, and I minor in psych, so like I do a lot of reading about people, and like one thing, like a book I read, and it talks about Hitler in particular, and like certain people don't see what they're doing as wrong. So Hitler, for instance, like you said, murder is like this abstract concept of some people see it as wrong, some people see it as right, but in Hitler's mind, what he was doing was for the better of planet, or of Earth, and if you talk to him, by all means, like he thought he was correct in all things. And in terms of religion, I don't really have a say. I was raised in a Catholic household, but I'm not religious. Like I don't believe in God or the afterlife. Like I believe in science, so I have no opinion on that.
So if there's no God, what's wrong with killing a baby in the womb?
I don't
Well,
know.
If there's no God, it's also what the people around you that influence you. So like if I don't believe in God, but like everyone around me says that murdering is wrong, then obviously with the word of mouth and the like mental state, I will believe that murdering is wrong. And that's how I was raised as a kid, and it's all based on how you were raised as a kid. I believe that's the way how you see if the things is right or wrong. It's because how you raised as a kid. So if you're raised as a kid as like seeing that murdering is right, maybe when they grow up, that's what they always gonna see, like murdering is right. But if you're raised as like a kid who sees that murdering is wrong, obviously, once you grow up, you're always gonna have that mentality that murdering is wrong. Like, that's what I believe.
Sure. So parents have quite an influence on their child and could potentially convince them that murder is okay, but that doesn't make it right.
Yeah,
right.
Like, it's a big play in a child's life, or like how they believe or how they see what murder is.
Sure. So you talked about like an afterlife. If you were to die tonight, hope that doesn't happen. Hope you guys have long lives, right? Are you both first year?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sorry. If you were to die tonight, how confident are you that you would be with God in heaven?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. Like,
how would you plead your case if, by the way, I appreciate, you guys are great, like answering these questions and taking the time and stuff. I appreciate it. How would you answer the question if God were to look at you, and you can take a second to think about it, and he were to say, why should I let you into heaven? How would you kind of plead your case?
I have nothing to say on that, because personally, I know like everyone have done something bad in their life. Maybe they are forgiven by God, maybe not. But personally, I don't know where I'm gonna end up after life. Yeah. Yeah.
So, on what standard do you think God would let someone into heaven?
Don't know.
Like, some people kind of think, if you've done enough good in your life, then maybe you'd be okay, right? We've talked about Hitler. None of us are as bad as Hitler. We've not murdered thousands of people, millions of people.
See, and the thing that's tricky with that, and again, I'm not religious, I don't believe in an afterlife, but how are you to justify someone, if there is a heaven, who goes to heaven or not? And as I mentioned, in Hitler's mind, what he was doing was right. He believed he was doing something good for the better of the planet. Just because everyone else didn't see it as right, does that subject him to not going to heaven if he was convinced what he was doing was right? Because there was no convincing him it was wrong, because in his mind it was right. And is that just the way he was born? Was that the way God created him? Because that's not Hitler's fault. That's just, it's not like he saw it as something wrong. So.
Yeah, I'll address that. But just kind of back to the question, what do you think God's standard is to let us into heaven?
Don't know. Like, to be honest, some people might do a few things in their life, a few good things in their life, and they believe that's good enough for God to let them in, whereas others just keep doing good things in their lives, but they also have done some bad things, and they believe that God wouldn't let them in because of the bad things that they've done. So, like, after all, I believe that that's still, like, opinion based of what you believe in, like what you want to go and what you believe, like if you have done enough for God to let you into heaven, or if you haven't done enough for God to like let you go into heaven. It's mostly
So the Bible says that God will judge us against his law. So have you heard of the Ten Commandments?
no, like I do go to church, but like I can't say that I believe in it, but just son aspect.
Have you heard of it though, the Ten Commandments? Have you heard of the Ten Commandments?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Ten Commandments are basically a summary of God's law that he has given to mankind. And really, most of them we know intrinsically are wrong. Have you ever, can I ask you maybe a few questions to see if you've kept the Ten Commandments? Would you guys I can answer them along with you and just be honest.
I know of them. I don't remember them.
Have you ever stolen anything in your life?
Yes.
Even if it was like downloading music or a movie illegally.
There we go. Yes.
I have as well. What do you call someone who steals things?
Thief.
I don't know.
A thief. Yeah. Have you ever told a lie in your life, even if it was small?
Yes.
Yes. I believe everyone have done that, even if it's a good way. Everyone have lied in their lives.
Have you lied?
Yeah, so have I. What do you call someone who tells lies? You're right, liars. And the Bible says in the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not lie, shall not bear false witness. Have you ever committed adultery? Slept with someone that isn't your wife? You're not married, so...
Yes. Oh, then no. Like, not my wife, yes, but I don't have a wife, so.
No. Yeah. Sure is no.
The Bible actually kind of says, the Bible does say that if you were to lust after a woman in your heart, you've committed adultery with her in your heart. Have you ever lusted after a woman?
What does that mean?
Had sexual thoughts about her?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so have I. And so we've just gone through 3 of the 10 Commandments, and we're lying, thieving adulterers at heart. So if God were to judge us, we could go through the rest of them. We've broken all of them. The Bible says we shouldn't murder. Now, you guys, I'm assuming, haven't committed murder. You haven't killed anyone. But Jesus says that if you have hatred towards someone in your heart, you have a murderous heart. And so we've had hatred at times in our lives, right? So we can just keep going through them, and we've broken all of them. So if God were to judge you based on the standard of the 10 Commandments, would you be found innocent or guilty?
I feel like I can't answer this just because, again, like, I don't believe in there's a God and there is an afterlife. My opinions on life are different on different things. And, like in murder being wrong, I think that's the fact that we have intrinsic values. It's when somebody does something to upset you, that's why you feel sick to your stomach, because as humans, we're created to feel this way. Not by God, just by science, in my mind at least. Right. So that's more...
But the question is, like, if God judges us based
on
that standard, would you be innocent or guilty?
Based with the 10 standards, I believe everyone's going to be completely guilty.
Yeah, we would all be guilty. So what would you say if I told you that there's no one living on this planet right now that is good enough to be with God in heaven? We've all fallen short.
I believe that.
Yeah, but there's
That's interesting. Why do you believe that if you don't believe in God?
No, I believe that, like, what you're saying, like, every
Based
person
on
has...
I see.
But that's based on what you're saying, but that's not what people believe. Like, people might believe that they haven't broke anything and they're still, like, with God after heaven. It's, like, opinion-based after all.
Right, but, like, do you believe there's one truth? There's one absolute truth? There can't be two competing things that contradict each other that are true at the same time. Like, there has to be one truth, right?
Then it's guilty. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's God's truth, right? God would be the standard of truth, and He's given us His Word, the Bible, as that standard. So then, if we all fall short, if we've all sinned, what hope is there that we can be with God in heaven?
I'm not religious enough to say
Right,
that.
right. Can I just share what I believe? So this is why Jesus came. And, you're not religious, but obviously you've heard of Jesus. You probably have an opinion on him. The reason Jesus came was to live the life that we could not live. So we believe Jesus is God in the flesh. We tried to be good enough to get to God, but ultimately we fall short. And so God actually came down to us in the person of Jesus Christ. He lived a perfect life, so he upheld the law. If I were to ask him the same questions I asked you, have you ever lied? Have you ever lusted? Have you ever used God's name in vain? Have you ever stolen anything? He could honestly answer no, and he wouldn't have been lying. The reason he was able to live that perfect life was because he was God. The Bible also says the wages of sin is death. So the reason we die, and we know something's wrong with death, right? I don't know if you've ever been to a funeral, but there's something inside of you that just knows this can't be it. This is so wrong. This wasn't the way it's meant to be. The reason we die is because we've sinned. And the wages of sin is death. That's what we deserve. And so Jesus, even though he lived a perfect life and was the only one not deserving of death, one of the main purposes he came to this earth was to die. He died on our behalf. We just had a day off last Friday to remember that Jesus died on the cross. And a lot of people don't understand what took place on the cross. It wasn't just a brutal physical death, but he actually paid the fine for our sin. He paid the penalty. It's almost as though the judge was about to put down the gavel and say, you're guilty, and Jesus says, convict me instead so that they can go free. And then 3 days later, Jesus rose from the dead. And he says that if we repent, which is kind of an old-fashioned word, but it means if you turn away from your sin and turn toward Jesus and believe in him, the righteous, perfect life he lived would be credited to your account, and the punishment that we deserve for all of the sins that we've committed against God would have been dealt with on the cross. And so there's only salvation in Jesus. So it's not about being good enough. It's about Jesus Christ, who was good enough and who died in our place.